Inspired by sound.
Here is a very silly track. And why did it just dim like that? Because I hit the dim button instead of using faders on a mixer like a normal person. Just to be a little extra for no good reason. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Inspired by Sound, in which I take you through a track that I wrote when I was 10 or 11 years old back in the kind of early to mid 90s. There are two versions of this track I'm going to show you. There's this one, which is the default unmixed track, and then there's the mix that I did, which may not be the best thing you've ever heard, and in fact probably isn't, but it is what I did. So I thought I'd take you through that today and just talk about how it came to be. How it came to be was this. I found an old tape of me, which I probably shouldn't have found, in a box that I probably shouldn't have looked in, and on this tape were 4 tracks. One of them is already on YouTube, and this one will also be, by the time you're hearing this, oh dear, for my sins. This was recorded in a studio in mono, that's why this track is mono, and kind of clippy and bad. So I took that track off of a tape. I used a piece of software called Demucs, D-E-M-U-C-S, and what that does is it takes, using AI, a track that you give it and splits it into 4 component parts: drums, bass, vocal, and other. Now, all apart from other are what they sound like. Other is the combination of everything else that isn't bass, drums, or vocals. So, as a result of that, I was able to get this track and split it, and put it into Logic, and it's gone on a tempo, and Logic's done its cool flex time thing, and I can now mix it and show you what that's like in a minute. So I will. But first, let me just undo this, so that you can hear the track in all its really bad glory, unmixed for a few more minutes, because you know you want to. Well, seconds anyway. Right, let's stop right there before we carry on. Let me just show you a little bit of each of these tracks here. So I'm going to solo the bass track first. And this is really where the power of Demucs comes into its own, because although this is not the best material ever, right, that I've given Demucs, it still was able to get out a decent chunk of sound and separate them into component parts, considering it was a standard tape 2-track mix. And not a great tape, by the way, either. And not a great recording, by the way, either. But it still did this magic. The bass, by itself, goes thusly. I'll stop right there, and I'll go back to the same part where I just stopped that. What was it, 2 bars? 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Now, I don't know about you, but I was quite impressed with that. Let's hear these drums separated. Of course, I'm playing at a part there's no drums. Can we just go back a little bit, or forward? Okay, we got drums now. Have some drums. About you, but I'm kind of impressed by that. You give an app or a piece of software a thing and it splits it all out for you like that. It's ridiculous. Here's the other track, which is basically, in my case, piano, bell, and some strings. And by the way, as far as I'm aware, all these sounds come from an old Korg M1 in somebody's studio that I visited as a kid. Alright, stop. And then lastly, me saying, you know how nice this song is through a sampler, because when I was at the studio, they said, oh, you should sample your voice for the ages. And I was like, I don't know what to say. And so I got on a mic, and as a kid, I said, you know how nice this song is. Because what else could I think to say? Not a lot, apparently. So here's me saying, in a minute, as it reaches that point, all faint and far away and not great. Yippee.
You know how strong it is?
Isn't that cute? Baby me. It's actually better in the beginning. Let's see if I can show you the beginning version, because it's clearer, slightly clearer there. And there's hum. You can even hear hum come through the recording. It's honestly amazing that Demucs got out as much as it did. Now, if you don't feel like installing loads of weird command line bits and bobs and tools and pieces and hammers and chisels and screwdrivers, you can do a similar thing that I've just done with this track by going to audiostrip.co.uk. And I'll put a link in the video description to that. This video is not sponsored or anything like that, by the way, but I just think that this kind of technology is so amazingly cool, and I'm infatuated with playing with it, that I thought, let me give it an old track of mine and see how I could get with it. Because I don't have, obviously, the stems to this piece in any way, shape, or form. I don't even remember the studio that I went to, know the people it came from, anything like that. So, you know, I can only do what I can do. But anyway, let's go now to this mixed version and show you what I got. Well, you heard the other one. Just rewind the video if you've forgotten. Let me show you this. Now, all I can say at this point is I must have liked the key of C as a kid, so, you know, it is what it is. Right, so that's what that sounds like. It's a bit different from the other one, and let me talk you through the changes I've made, and I'll show you the effects bypassed and all that entails. So first of all, down at this bottom here is a reverb. It's a common reverb, which is a bus, but I've also turned it into a track so that I can actually just mute and solo it as I wish. So let's play the track from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, bar 9. All right, I'll just go back to that and I'll mute the reverb now. It becomes all dry. Put it back. I'll solo it. I've made some significant changes to that reverb so that the bottom end is all taken out. In this way, I can still send drums to it on an aux send, but the bass drum does not really go through the reverb at all. And I've sent some of the bass to it as well, just for a tiny bit of sound difference. I'll solo the bass part. You can really barely notice it, but it is there. Right, so let's talk about all the effects I've added to the things, and I've panned the bass slightly off to the side and everything, because what I wanted to really do with this was give this give this track a little bit of movement, because of course before it was all mono and there was nothing really there. So I thought to myself, how can I do this with a mono track? And since other encompasses so much, how can I get it to sound a bit more stereo-y? And I did what most people in this situation probably do, or maybe a lot of people. I could have used like a stereo delay, but I thought that would be a little cheap. So I used a chorus. So, all right, it doesn't really widen or it doesn't give it stereo anything, but it pretends like it does. But anyway, let's talk about bass for now. So here's the bass, soloed. It's all right. Let me take off the effects that I've put on it with the option semicolon in my key commands. It gets flatter, and you can actually hear more detail through the back. Look. Let's put that back. So what have I done to that? Well, let's look at the mixer and what we would see, if you can see, and if you can't, well, I'll tell you anyway. I've got a console EQ in here, which is basically I'm using all Logic stock plugins for this, by the way. I should make that clear from the outset. I'm not using any NI plugins or isotope plugins like I've got, or Waves or Eventide or anything like that. This is purely Logic stock. I did this so that I could share this with my students. So there's only two effects on here. The first is this console EQ, which I'm now showing on screen for those who can see such things. Not for any particular reason, but just maybe because you might find it interesting. And the preset I chose is low boost. Now, what I don't remember, because I did this last Sunday, and now today's the 2nd of April, 2022, is found a preset, and I'm not sure if I modified it, but when I tend to do things like this, I tend to start with a preset that gets close to what I want, and then I modify it if needed. Sometimes presets don't even need modification. Now, there's a rule of school that says start with the beginning and then make your changes, but I don't really feel like that. I feel like I want to get stuff done, and I find that starting with the basis of what I want is cool. Now, in the case of reverbs, I do tend to modify things, but with an EQ, sometimes people know what I want better than I know what I want. And that's the thing about presets. They're there to help you. And sometimes they're there to just solve your issues. And that's how I feel about it. It's a personal decision. So yeah, I'll use this low boost from the console EQ in Logic, and here are some of the controls on the screen if you wish to look at them. I can make this project available for those who might be interested in it anyway. Since it's all my material, I can do that. Right, I'll close this down now. Let's go into the second. This is the noise gate, and there's not a lot really here, but it just... I chose acoustic bass gate, and it did the job. Did I make any changes to that? Can't remember. But what I can do is keep the track soloed, and then I can turn the gate on and off individually. Before, when I was bypassing the effects on the track, it was actually global per track, so you would actually hear all the effects go on and off. So let's do it this way. Bass with the gate on. Gate off. It's subtle, but I can hear more drums in the back. And the reason I did that is because the track is panned, and because AI can only do so much with the material it's given. Some of that stuff that's bleeding through might have sounded weird as it's panned off, considering it was all mono source previously. So I thought putting a gate on this track in particular was probably an idea that might work. I'll go back to the EQ, because what I realized I didn't do was bypass the EQ separately. So I'll play the same passage again and bypass the EQ. So EQ, let's start with it off this time. It's quite flat in a way. EQ on. Alrighty. Drums time. The drums are probably the most modified out of everything. There's only a channel EQ on here, Logic default channel EQ, but I did make changes here, and so there is no preset used, it's just user default. So let's talk about these and solo this. All right, let's bypass the EQ for a start. I want you to hear this ringing, and I mean absolutely zinging, ringing bass drum that gives me, oh boy, is it ringy or what? That is ringy as all get out. Let's flip this checkbox over. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's a bit shiny. Back. There you go. So what did I do to get that? Well, let's look at there's peaks down here, and I want to talk about these. Because the peaks really is what got me going. I was like, all right, this peak 1 is a little notchy thing. So I set the frequency of the peak 1 to 49.4 hertz. And I've got the gain to minus 21.6 dB and the Q factor 100%. The reason I did that is so that I could really notch out that ringy bass drum. Now, it's kind of, I would say, between G and F sharp, that bass drum, and I just thought it didn't mesh well with the piece, and it was in the bass frequency, and I didn't like that, so I just decided I'd get rid of that. It's still punchy, but it's punchy without a lot of nasty leftover ringingness, and I was like, yeah, I can live with that. That's what I want. Right. I didn't do anything with peak 2. I didn't do anything with peak 3 gain. But I do have an exaggerated peak 4 gain, which is just to boost the hi-hats that little bit extra. So here is it with the peak active. And I'll take away the thing. It's probably not very noticeable, but if I put it back, it just brings out the hi-hats a bit, because I thought that they were getting lost under the other. And since the piano and strings are already pre-recorded, of course, I couldn't turn down the strings in the other track, which we'll get to in a minute. So all I could do is kind of bring everything up around it a bit. I could have possibly EQ'd out some of the frequencies in the other, but I tried not to. I didn't really want to adjust too many things that I thought might detract from the thing. Like I said, Maybe not the best mix ever, but my mix. My mix. So there's that. Okay. Let's shut that down. That's all the drums, basically. But I just think it makes such a difference by having that peak one, particularly with that 49.4 hertz, taking out that huge booming piece of madness. Now the other, very simple here. I've just got a chorus on this, so I will flip the solo on, and we'll go into the chorus. This is, again, just Logic stock chorus. So let's bypass the chorus. If you're thinking it's slightly off to the right, or my headphones are broken, or your speakers, no, they're not. I have panned this a bit because the bass is slightly panned, and this is also slightly panned. The drums are center. Let's put the vocal back. The chorus back. So really, this chorus is a bit retro, and I like that. It almost feels a bit like tape waver in a way. It wouldn't be, it'd be more flatter than wow, you know? A bit of tape flutter. And actually, because this tape did have a bit of that in real life, it's a bit like a slightly twisty tape, but hopefully not too obnoxious. So the mix for this chorus is 75%. The intensity is 10%. Rate 0.50 hertz, so not a lot. And the delay mode has not been modified. So that's basically it. This chorus plugin is very minimal, but it serves its purpose. Did I add anything else to this track? No, I didn't. So that's that one. They all do have this common bus, this reverb bus as well, which you have heard throughout. I mentioned as well. Now, the vocals. Yes, Little Me. This only contains a stereo delay, built in Logic again. But apparently I can't get to it. Oh, there I can. It was being a bit recalcitrant. Probably like a young me, actually, all told. So, does this still work here? Solo that. Am I saying anything at this point? No. Let's go back to the beginning then, because I know that I'm... So that's what the delays are. It's very subtle. Let's bypass the delay. Notice that the initial recording has a sort of mono delay on it too. I have no idea what that sounded like in stereo because I just can't remember that far back. You're talking 1992 or 3 or something, so no recollection, I'm afraid. Getting old, no idea what's happening here. So let's put the delay back on. The modern day delay, if you will. Say it again, man. You know you want to. So I also could have removed some hum from that because you can hear there's hum in the recording. The reason I didn't actually is because the hum kind of propagates over the other tracks too. And I mean that, the other track, the bass track and the drum track a little bit. And if I notch it out on all of them, it'd be kind of a cut across the whole thing and it would sound a little bit weird. So I left the hum in. It's not quite masked by the track, but it's sort of masked by the track. So why did I add this delay? For a bit of movement, really. I'll play you the track Everything Together now, and you'll hear, I'll play it without and then I'll play it with. So I'll bypass it, here's it without the delay. And again without. And then stop and I'll put the delay back. Super, super subtle. So that's that. And then the last thing for me to show you is just this reverb, which is a modified chromoverb, which is again a Logic stock. So here I can solo it and I can, there's no point bypassing it because, well, you'll just hear the track as it is. But soloed, you'll notice there's not a lot of drums there. And that is because I went and modified bits and pieces of things. Now, what I modified, I honestly don't remember again. I should have done this mix and things all in one go. That would have been more helpful. But I did. I'm looking at the dampingy stuff. And there's an EQ on off here somewhere. And if I can find the EQ on off, then hopefully that's what it would sound like without my changes. At least the EQ changes. Let's put the EQ back. So it's slightly less mids, quite a lot of no bottom end there. And that's because I just thought the reverb doesn't need all that mud adding to it. So yeah, there's quite a few things there. And it's nice that I can just bypass only the EQ without just taking away the whole the whole plugin, which would be pointless because you already know what that would sound like. It would sound like the track. So yeah, this is just a short Inspired by Sound, really, just to show you what it's like. I'm going to leave you, as I always do, by playing the whole track out and then leaving your screens and your ears and your minds for a while. But I hope you found this a little interesting. And, well, thanks for watching, listening, being a part of this mad thing. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Take care. Speak soon.